we filming?
I think so, yeah.
Connor, are we filming?
You pressed the button, so I'd guess so.
Folks, welcome back to Radio Rialto. Old format. Like, pretty much exactly a year later.
Oh, I hate that you brought that up. But
exactly
yeah,
a year later
well,
from...
for them, it's like 3 years later.
Yes.
But for us, it's
in
about a year.
35 years when we finally open up the vault and release these.
Yeah.
Exactly a year later from Expedition. We are resuming, and when's the last time? Well, we recorded the things in January.
Yeah.
And then previously in that, it wasn't until last August.
Yeah. Because New Mutants was here.
Yes.
That was August. Yeah, what am I talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no. They were roommates. That was our roommate.
Yeah. So it's been a year since New Mutants, and then we did that brief little Tarantino Soderbergh expedition.
Yeah. The Ray Nicolette Power Hour, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And now we're back for the miniseries we've been promising for like several months now.
Yeah.
We're calling this More Smoke, Please.
Oh, that's right. I forgot we settled on that.
The 5 films of Bob Fosse.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Fosse. Acclaimed director of both stage and screen, as in addition to being one of arguably the most infamous choreographer of all time.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no, he's no Kenny Ortega, but...
No one's Kenny Ortega. One of my top 5 favorite filmmakers, Kenny Ortega.
Yeah.
And we're starting with... I guess we should start with what our background with Fosse is. I'll let you start because you have...
Mine's lesser, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, you love The Thing.
Oh, yes, I do love Fosse Verdon.
Yes.
Which, my exposure to him was that, because I watched it because of Michelle Williams and, I almost called him Bob Fosse, because of Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
And to the point, I didn't know he was the director of Cabaret until I watched the show.
Wow.
I just knew, I heard it was about a choreographer and a Broadway actress. And I was like, cool, I'll watch it. I learned everything I knew about Bob Fosse from watching that show. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I've since seen Cabaret, Sweet Cherry that we're talking about today, and all that jazz.
Yeah. We've each seen 3.
Yeah.
And the only thing, well, now you should, because this was our first.
4.
This is our first time with Sweet Charity.
But
both of
we've
us.
seen 4 total now.
We've seen 4 total.
Yeah.
Star 80 is a mystery to both of us.
It is, yeah.
Well, I know what it's. I know a lot about what it's about, but I haven't seen the actual film. But our third is different for each of us.
Yeah.
And we'll get to those later. Mine is, I did theater growing up, so the name Fosse was tossed around a while. I first knew it basically as a style of dance, and I knew it was like, it came from this one guy, Bob Fosse. But anything with a lot of, like, limb articulation.
The legs, the hats.
Yeah, limb articulation and stuff with props, that's the Fosse style. And then as I got older, the stories about him and the shows that he was involved with, I became more familiar with. Obviously, his history with Cabaret and Chicago, and became sort of infamous. And my interest in theater history and my film nerdom kind of collided. And then when I realized that he also made movies, but not only just movies, just like a few like very infamous movies. And also my obsession with stand-up comedy, and I'm like, oh, he made the Lenny Bruce biopic? Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So yeah, it's just it's funny because like my knowledge of Fosse was probably more wide-ranging than yours, but you probably know more details than I do because I haven't watched that many series.
Well, I know more about the man, you know more about his career.
Yes.
I would say. Yeah.
Yes. Everything I know about the man is from his work because he put so much of himself into his work.
Yeah.
To the point where all that jazz is
just Bob Fosse.
Is just Bob Fosse. But I did invest in a 21-hour-long audiobook biography that will be listened to by the time we finish this.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have all sorts of anecdotes to build off of you with. Mm-hmm. And I knew the combo of, Fosse, Verdon, not only one of the great professional partnerships of the American musical theater, but also they had a very tumultuous personal relationship.
Yeah.
See, he gets it.
Oh, he gets it. And it's worth mentioning, like, we're not going to talk about individual episodes here, we're watching the miniseries as we watch these movies too.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
have like little
There'll be anecdotes,
Yeah, little
but
dips.
the primary focus is the movies
yeah.
themselves.
We're not gonna like have individual
Yeah.
episodes about. Oh, that would be a lot of fun. We're
Yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah, and before we watched Sweet Charity, we watched Pajama Game, which he did the choreo. Blah, 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 blah.
He did the foot dances for.
He did the feet taps. He did the choreography for
Yep.
that. I think both on stage and in the movie. I know he was the original choreographer of Damn Yankees, which we have not watched the film version of that yet, which Gwen Verdon is in.
Yeah.
She originated that part on Broadway, and she's in the film. But we just sort of was like his sort of like before he was directing, when he was primarily just a choreographer, to get that taste. And it's interesting, like what parts of his style were present even then, and what like evolved later.
Yeah.
Because there are parts of Pajama Game that do have that sort of manic limb thing and like crowds coming together in very unique ways. I'm basically just describing choreography, but he uses bodies interacting with physical space and each other in very distinct ways. And it's interesting what was sort of existed then and what was more in sort of the traditional house style of the American musical. And that predates this movie by exactly like 12-ish years, I think.
Yeah.
I did a brief little bit of research about the stage production after we watched the movie before we started recording. The original production premiered in 1966 on Broadway. It was nominated for the Tony for Best Musical. I believe our friend John McMartin, who plays Oscar, won the Tony. And I believe Gwen was nominated but didn't win. And it was a pretty big hit on Broadway, so there was talks of making it into a motion picture pretty immediately. And it took a while to develop because this came out in 69, so 3 years later. And I think a lot happened in the world between those 3 years that made it go from a smash on stage to a flop on screen.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into the... Oh, we should also mention that Gwen Verdon originated the part of Charity on stage. One thing I didn't know that I found out in my research, Chita Rivera, who's in the movie, was Charity in the national tour.
Oh, that's fun.
And then she moved over to Nikki, right?
Yeah, it's
yes,
Nikki. Yeah.
In this, and this is her film debut.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I love Chita Rivera so much. We'll get into and Gwen Verdon also like kind of co-choreographed this movie. She went uncredited. She specifically worked with McLean.
Yeah, she was on set like every day.
She was on set every day. She was working with McLean directly, obviously, because she was the director's partner, and also she originated the part. So she sort of was her spiritual guide. She also said, if we make this movie, it should be Shirley MacLaine. That was Gwen Verdon's suggestion. So she sort of blessed the whole transition between the two. And Gwen Verdon is obviously very important in Bob Fosse's life, both personally and professionally. The two sort of go hand in hand. And she was both muse and actual partner. They had a very interesting dynamic together. But anyway, thoughts about the movie? Do you want to just like general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it.
I loved it. I enjoyed this.
No,
I was surprised how much I liked it, because I was here's the thing, I was going in thinking I was going to like it and thinking it was going to be very interesting, but I was also expecting it to be a little bit of a disaster. It's messy, but it is shocking how cohesive it actually is. And at the same time, I completely understand everywhere they went wrong in terms of financial success.
Yeah. I was shook like how a movie like this could exist.
Yeah. I think it comes down to a different thing. Like, when the show premieres in 1966, it is very much of its moment. And the 1960s were such a culturally tumultuous decade that 3 years later it already feels ancient.
Yeah.
Because, like, especially that they're not a cult.
They're kind of a cult. He is a religious leader.
But it's also more performance art than anything else.
Yeah.
I feel he's not Charles Manson.
No, I don't. That's not what they were going for.
It was before the Manson thing even happened. But it's really interesting because that sort of Sammy Davis Jr. and his sort of commune of like free love sort of things. What's interesting is that they are the exact central point of both beatniks of the late 50s and early 60s. Probably people that Fosse and Verdon and the rest of the creative team were actually coming of age with. That was the cool counterculture. And them reacting to the early rise of this sort of hippie culture.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this weird mishmash of the two that probably worked just fine on stage in 66. And then by the time the movie rolls around in 69, it feels like a bunch of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like, completely misunderstanding the free love movement.
Yeah.
And by the time, like, this movie rolls, it's like the summer of Woodstock. And this is like, it's a bunch of people in their late 30s trying to figure out what's hip. This movie feels it's so 1960s, but it's also, because it's so 1960s and it's at the tail end of the 60s, it's like, imagine you took all of Mad Men and you put it in one movie. That is Sweet Charity.
Yeah.
It is the entire cultural approximation of the 1960s into one movie, without all the, like, race and feminism stuff.
Yes.
Without the actual politics.
Yeah.
Just, like, style and aesthetics.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to?
No, I mean, it's a very good movie. I was surprised that the thing of this magnitude exists. How like people would allow Fosse to do half the stuff he did in this movie is astronomical to me.
Well, that's the other thing, because if you were to look at the box office charts for the 1960s, a lot of the biggest successes were these bloated musicals. It was your West Side Stories, your My Fair Ladies, your Sound of Musics. Like, these were the big box office smash, and a lot of times they won Best Picture and things like that.
Yeah.
But then you have a string of, like, 3 years where you have this, Hello Dolly, Julie Andrews in a movie called Star that nobody's fucking heard of, and they're all way too expensive, and they've nearly bankrupt their studios.
Yeah. See, even with that, I just think about, like, actually, making movies. Never this extreme, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just, like, the logistics of all this stuff he has involved. Like, the shot with the fountain where, like, it's the second they finish the move.
Yeah.
It's like something like that took, like, in the amount of times dancing would just, like, change location and costume. Obviously, the man has a vision, as we'll talk about countless times, I'm sure, throughout this miniseries. But just the fact that he was, like, able to do this stuff. And here's the thing. I'm assuming this also went, like, way over time and over budget, like most of his stuff did, correct?
Here's the thing. I don't know if it specifically went over time or over budget. It was always supposed to be insane and expensive.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just like, you have a bunch of different things happening at the same time. You have the sort of disassembling of the traditional Hollywood system and them trying to figure out how to connect to audiences in any way, shape, and form with natural cultural shifts in terms of, like, people they're watching television, they're going to rock and roll concerts, they're not necessarily going to the movies. So you still have that big studio money, and you also have the Hollywood New Age. So you have, like, these young guys like Mike Nichols and stuff, and a lot of them who come from theater, and they're shaking things up. And it was like, okay, you have this guy. He has, like, 5 different Tonys. He originated the show. He has experience in films, not directing, but he has been involved with film productions in the past. He has a little bit of everything. He has an energy. He's Bob Fosse. So he commands a room, and then you're like, what do we have to lose? Turns out, a lot of money. But we're probably going to do that anything. What do we have to lose? What I was really impressed with is the level of confidence that he has as a film director.
Yeah.
At round 1, especially with a production as big as this. Because watching Cabaret, I was like, yeah, this is a young director kind of figuring things out. He doesn't have a lot to lose. He's trying a lot of different things. But also Cabaret being a much smaller scale movie. And the story, in a weird way, despite being about World War II, is kind of smaller scale.
Yeah.
It's a little dirtier, it's a little grittier, you can try a bunch of different things. Whereas this, like, demands, like, despite being about, like, societal divides, and Charity's sort of down-and-out girl, it has a more sort of slick, polished, stagey, everything's gonna be fine attitude, even though it has a bummer ending.
See, Fosse called the ending, like, it's a bummer, but it's inspirational. I kind of agree with that, yeah.
Well, it says, and she lived hopefully ever after. The show is inherently about not letting hope die.
Yeah, like, I think Charity's going to be fine.
Yeah, Charity will. It's
going to be rough, but
she's
Charity's
a fighter.
Gonna be fine.
She'll figure things out.
Yeah. So I don't think the ending is a downer.
Yeah.
I think we can talk more about the
But in comparison to, like, Sound of Music, where they climb the hills and they live happily ever after.
Where they escape the Nazis. Yes. It's very different than that kind of happy ending.
Yes. And it's not like West Side Story, which is this grand tragedy.
Yeah.
The whole point is this sort of aura of heightened emotion and death and love. Whereas this
Yeah.
is just like a sort of series of slices of life. Like
Yeah.
the show doesn't really have a. I mean, it's based on a freaking Fellini movie. It doesn't really have a plot.
No, not really.
It's about life and it has ideas and it's about events
Yeah.
to the point where our romantic lead isn't really introduced until like the end of Act 1.
Yeah. No, it's the characters that move the story forward, not the actual story itself.
Yes.
Which, luckily for Shirley MacLaine, Charity's very compelling. She
Yeah.
makes Charity incredibly compelling.
Yeah, she's incredible in this movie.
Yeah, so I'm cool with seeing Charity just go from place to place to place.
Yeah.
And it's the interesting thing is, when we meet, is Vittorio, is that the actor's name, played by Ricardo Montalban?
Yeah.
We meet him like, oh, he's the new love interest of this movie.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's the new love interest.
And
then
he's
it's like,
here
he
for like
disappears.
25 minutes
Yeah.
and then he moves on.
I like that. I like that structured, like, because I never knew what was going to happen with Charity.
No.
And I feel like she's going to have a lot more of that in her life.
Yeah.
Where it's like she meets a guy, she spends one night with him, he's going to be it for her, and then it dips. Or with, what was the guy's name?
Oscar?
Oscar, thank
Yeah.
you. I'm going to call him Oliver for some reason. When she meets Oscar, she thought that was obviously going to be it.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a couple more Oscars in her life.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
there's going to be a
bummer.
couple more Charlies and there's going to be a couple more.
Torios, yeah. She's going to get this string of men. Eventually she'll get there because she's going to pick herself up by her bootstraps, with old, someone from this era would say.
Yeah.
And, keep going.
But it's funny because usually, like, the old screenwriting thing was like, if you're making a movie about a certain portion of a person's life, it should be the most important portion of her life.
Yeah.
Whereas this feels like, I feel like we could have gone to Charity, like, 5 years earlier and 5 years later, and we probably would have gotten a very similar movie, and I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah. No, because Charity's always going to be Charity.
Yes.
And I would argue every part of her life is the most interesting part of her life.
Yeah.
Because even if we spent the whole 8 years she's been working at the place,
Yeah.
that's also different kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I think I think if you have a character that's compelling enough, they can be in any kind of story and they'll sell it.
Yeah.
And anyone in this movie I feel like is compelling enough to like sell their own like movie offside.
Yeah.
I can watch like a 2-hour like Hollywood sex drama with Vittorio.
Yeah, I feel like the one person who wouldn't is Oscar.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of his point, his presence was like, Charity probably will be the most exciting thing to ever happen to him.
Yeah. I think hands down.
And he knows that can't last. He knows that's unmanageable.
Yeah. Which he realizes once he sees, like, then he's in that party, he's like, this is not the kind of person I want to be with.
Yeah.
She's not the kind of person, I don't care about all this.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. Which that's an ironic phrase, considering the marriage was called off. But.
Yeah. That took me a second. No, and just the very simple thing where it's like they're at the city hall at the marriage certificate sort of like section, and she sees people coming out and they've just been married, and she sees that it's this beautiful joyous thing because it is, and everyone's happy, and she starts throwing rice at them, and he says like there's a sign that says you can't throw rice there. And that one moment, though no one is in the wrong at either of those, that shows fundamentally the different things how they see the world. He notices the rule immediately, and she just sees human emotion.
Rule doesn't matter when there's like joy unfurling.
But it's also like
you.
it's not like she's murdering someone.
No.
She's going basically on instinct.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, a joyous moment. It's a wedding. I have rice because it's my wedding as well.
Yeah,
I'll give them some of my rice.
How they just their viewpoints.
Yeah.
Where it's earlier, pre that party, I think he would have thrown rice with Charity.
Yeah.
But now he's in a different time. Realizes like this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
He's going there more out of like obligation at this point for him than actually like wants to be married to her.
Yeah.
And I think it's moments like that or her asking like what are noticeable marks in the tattoo.
Yeah.
Where he's like and like the fact that this girl has a tattoo in general.
Well, not just that it has a tattoo. It's a tattoo with another man's name. It says Charlie.
Yeah.
Which is her boyfriend at the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he just realizes. I'm saying a guy like Oscar, he's never dated a like loose, not the term I'm looking for, like excitable woman in his entire life. This man has probably dated
he's never not dated like a clean cut like church going girl.
Exactly.
And Charity is not some floozy. She's very much a modern woman, and she's like a good person with good morals. But it's just like they come from two completely different backgrounds.
Exactly. Where he's never dated a girl who would like entertain getting a tattoo.
Yeah.
And it's not like a crazy, insane thing to have a tattoo.
No.
But even that, like the little moment for him, regardless if it says Charlie or not. Even the fact that this woman like has a tattoo, it like partly hits him too.
Yeah, but I feel like the tattoo is one thing, but the fact that it has another man's name, and also it's just like he is very much a man of his times, where it's just like he like specifically, like, he doesn't ask specifically for her body count, but he wants to know, like, how many men have you been with?
Yeah.
Because he's probably never been with a woman.
It's not even sex, just like entertained, like spoken to at this club.
Here's the thing, and I feel like in terms of, he's probably never dated that many women.
No.
In general, but I do think Oscar's a virgin.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because he mentioned, it was like, I'm part of a newsletter, the Church of the Month Club.
Yeah.
I don't think he's like an uber religious person, but I do think he's like, I'm a man of faith. Like, this is what the Bible says. Like, this is what my mother told me to do, and I'm going to keep doing that.
No, but I think it's not even, like I said, it's not even about sex. I think it's the fact that she's even like danced with these men suggestively.
I think it's about both. For him. I think it's about both.
And I think it's about both, but I think he kind of stops before he even gets to sex at some point. Well, it's about both.
I think it's just more about experience.
Yeah.
Charity is a more experienced person than he is. He has skills. He has, like, equity and stuff, but she has lived life in a way that he never has.
Well, he hasn't lived life because he has those skills and equity.
Yeah. I don't know how to build off this, but I realized I never answered your question before. When I was doing my research, the location shooting, because a good chunk of this movie is shot in location in New York, and I never say this, but this movie actually made me miss New York. Mm-hmm. I have a very complicated relationship with New York City. It's a city I love dearly, but every time I'm in it, I'm like, if this is the last time I'm in New York City, I would be fine. Yeah. And this movie actually made me miss New York. The location shooting in New York alone, 12 weeks.
Interesting.
That's 3 months.
Yeah. Just
in location shooting. And that's only like half the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure this took a lot of time.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like, there's a really elaborate number. One thing I didn't know, like, I'm a Brass Band, that big, crazy number, that's one of the longest musical numbers in movie history, apparently.
Oh,
it's like over 6 minutes long, and musical numbers rarely go past like 4.
Interesting.
It doesn't feel it at all.
It's a great number. It flies.
But imagine, like, you have to do that in chunks, which means going to different locations and stuff. Whereas something like Hey Big Spender, which is in one space, you can shoot that in less than a week.
Yeah.
You have a controlled environment, smaller space, don't have to move, don't have to worry about the sun, rain.
Yes. Don't have to clear out Wall Street.
You don't have to, wait for, like, people to run by. So, yeah, it was a big, long production.
Yeah.
In a way they do not give to first-time directors anymore.
No.
And they rarely did then either. It's just it's just like, I think his prestige was enough, and he did have some film experience with, like, fuck it, who else were we gonna get to make it? Exactly, and the other thing was, like, Shirley MacLaine was cast, and she's like, we should get the Fosse guy. We should get him. She really pushed for it.
Yeah. Like I said, the guy is a visionary.
Yes.
No one makes a movie like Bob Fosse.
No.
It's insane.
To the point where I've seen 3, and they're all incredibly different from each other.
Yeah.
And it's just like some of the things that he tries, where it's just like overlays, like weird. It was like, here's like a minute and a half. It's just gonna be stills that we're gonna move around Ken Burns style.
And one's just blurry.
Yes, one is literally just a blur, and that's supposed to set tone. She feels in a blur. And like, crazy, when she's in Vittorio's apartment and the song begins and it's 3 match cuts and the angle doesn't change, but just how close the camera is to her is.
Yeah.
They have slow motion, which is rare from a film for this time. They have crazy overlays. They have weird color changes where it becomes all psychedelic.
I love this scene. Like, it's like the Egyptian club where it's just like 3 different dance moves. It's not even focusing on Charity for like a long time.
It's like a 5-minute dance sequence.
Charity's not even in the number.
There's no lyrics. It's just choreography.
It's insane.
He does all these crazy, like, I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to go out of focus, and then we're going to go and focus and zoom out again, and that's the transition.
Yeah.
This movie has a ton of those.
It's insane.
No.
We don't have a Fosse today. Which is the most apparent thing I like looking when I watch this.
No. We didn't have a Fosse before or after that.
Yeah, we'll never have a Fosse again.
No, he was singular in a very distinct way. In a way that he, like, influenced, like, 3 different mediums. He influenced dance, the way you stage a musical in general, and then, like, direction of film. No one ever... And what was also really interesting, I watched that little featurette that was on the Blu-ray from the time. It was like a promotional behind the scenes thing. It was like 10 minutes long, and he's behind the camera when they're rolling. He's looking through the viewfinder.
Yeah,
which is because most directors do not do that at all.
Yeah.
They leave that to the DP or the camera op. But he's just like, because God, his other filmography is escaping from me, but Robert Sturris is the director of photography, and he's like an old school, legendary Hollywood cinematographer. And it's really interesting, like, he was just like, I was really expecting him to, like, want to wring my neck, but I told him what he wanted, he was like, all right, we can do that. And then Fosse would be behind the camera when it was actually rolling. He was the one looking through the viewfinder, which is rare, that amount of control given to a first-time director, especially on this level of... But also, like, despite coming from a completely different artistic world, like, his instant understanding of the medium is interesting.
I think that comes, he's been on sets before.
Yeah, he
knows
has
the basics.
film experience, yes.
And then, like, just a little bit of that basics to, like,
Yeah.
you know, just going for it.
But what's also interesting, because, like, he developed Sweet Charity from the ground up. He was the one who was like, I saw this Fellini movie, this should be a musical. And I think that initial spark of whatever he saw in that the movie Knights of Cabiria is what the basis of Sweet Charity. I don't think we mentioned that earlier.
No, I didn't.
And whatever initial spark, he just is able to carry with him through, at this point, like, almost 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's rare. That any artist can do that in any medium is rare. Especially in something like film, which takes forever.
Yeah. Months upon months of work. And then months upon months of editing. We were actually editing, like, reels of film.
God. Insanity.
Yeah.
Insanity. Well, the movie's like 2.5 hours long, and it's kind of aimless and plotless, but it flies.
It does, yeah.
I was sucked in the entire time.
This is what happens when it's just great art.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't, like, it doesn't drag for a second.
No.
Despite being 2.5 hours long, I never, like, checked the metaphorical watch.
No.
It's one of the points we had to pause. I was surprised how much time had passed.
Yeah. And I was surprised how much time was left, and I was like, all right, I'm in it. And it was like, because we watched the Blu-ray has the Roadshow version, which includes an overture and an intermission. So, like, at the end of Act 1, like I mentioned, it was like, we've just been introduced to our romantic lead.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the halfway mark? Like, what's left in the movie? No. Any numbers stand out to you besides all of them? They're literally...
Yeah, I love all of them.
I think the closest one to being a dud is the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's still doing interesting stuff, and it's shot in location in Central Park.
The first one's fine.
It's a fine number.
In terms of, like, standouts, it's Hey Big Spender for sure.
Yeah.
If They Could See Me Now, which obviously everyone says that. I just... What a good number.
Yeah.
Big Brass Band.
Yeah.
Is that what it's not called Big Brass Band? What is it called?
I think it's I'm a Brass Band.
Oh, I'm a Brass Band, yeah. The one where it's, like, one of the longest numbers in history.
Yeah.
Those are, like, here's I sound like such a, like, a noob because it's the 3, like, big ones from the show, but...
I love her, Paula, and Nikki number. Actually, no, the actress's name is Paula.
Yeah, they're talking.
Helene is the character. Their number, like, we're gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, and some of the dancing in that, it was like, I was shocked that Shirley MacLaine was able to hold her own like this. It was baffling.
Yeah. I mean, Bob would not let her not hold her own.
I know, but it's just
it's impressive. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna be on your A game for anyone, it's gonna be Bob Fosse, because he will not let you not be on your A game.
But she was up to the challenge, and it's interesting because, like, you can tell, like, listening to her. If I do have one complaint, it's just that the lip syncing.
Yeah, it's a little
not great. But all like you can tell the energy is still alive on set, so it kind of makes up for it.
Yeah.
And Shirley MacLaine, not a trained singer, but luckily with Charity but she's not a bad singer at all, and I can tell that it was like, no, that's Shirley MacLaine's voice. They didn't get like a Marnie Nixon to come in and replace her. It helps that Charity does not really demand like belting numbers, so she has all the heart, she has the energy, and she has a pleasant enough voice.
She does, yeah.
And but yeah, the energy, she's on set. Another crazy thing I found out, through most of the production, she had a terrible tooth infection, and she was in so much pain, but she just rode it out because she did not want to hold up the production because it was that expensive and that like sort of gargantuan to begin with. And it got to the point where someone asked her about a specific number, and she's like, I do not remember filming that number.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like the level, and you don't You can't tell for a second.
No.
For an actual second. To the point where when I read that, my mind boggled. God. No, she's a unique
Imagine
talent.
being talented.
Talented.
Imagine being devoted.
Determined.
No. I could never, quite simply.
No, but it's just like, we will never get a movie like this for so many reasons, because it was just at this crossroads of cultural history. It's like this old school bombast meets this new school sort of experimental mentality. It's just like, this film could only come out in 1969, and weirdly, while it being so ahead of its time, it was also behind its time. Yes. It's a supernova. It's an unstable particles are leaping off of this thing, and they're joining back in. It has this sort of atomic energy that is indescribable. Good movie.
To the point is that whole energy that you're talking about. I have yet to see Lenny in Star 80.
Yeah.
But this is my favorite Fosse I've seen so far, for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of leaves, no offense to my friends, All That Jazz and Cabaret, but it's way above them for me.
Well, here's the thing. We're going to rewatch Cabaret. I'm going to be interested. Cabaret is just such a singular achievement. Yeah. I think that movie's just kind of perfect.
Because I don't like it nearly as much as you do.
I adore Cabaret, to the point where my good friend Sally Bowles, she's on my laptop.
I don't know why they're going to pull out a Blu-ray of Cabaret that I know you don't own.
No, my good friend Sally Bowles, I literally carry her wherever I go.
Yeah.
But I am curious to see. This is a far more unique movie.
Yeah.
But I think Cabaret is just inherently more cohesive. It just is.
It is more cohesive. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot more tolerance for messiness than you do too.
Here's the thing. I think certain films can overcome being a mess, and I think this film does overcome being a mess. Which to the point where I was surprised this was actually as cohesive as it is. I think this film is just so singular. It's such a unique achievement that even if it has flaws, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's part of it. It's baked into the pie.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
in terms of pure Fosse thing I've seen. This is even the dance number where Shirley MacLaine's not even in it. Just them doing the 3 signature moves. Yeah. I was on the edge of my seat watching that. Yeah. And usually we've talked about me not liking things like singing in the rain, where it's that stuff singing in the rain does not work for me at all. I want to turn this off. Yeah. But when Fosse does it, I'm in the rhythm 1,000%. Yeah. And this just hit anyway. Maybe when I rewatch Cabaret and All That Jazz. Because here's the thing: this is a 4 for me. Those are both 3.5s. Yeah, it's not a huge astronomical difference. It's just this just really hit me for some reason. Maybe those will hit me as well. Yeah, but no, I'm excited to continue. I'm excited to pump this room full of smoke. Yeah, I'm excited to dive right in because Bob Fosse is a man. Just the way that man looks. Yeah, I love Bob Fosse. Yeah, Robert Fosse is my best friend.
No, he has that weird ugly hot thing. Yeah. Where it's you shouldn't be attractive, yet you are. You're the most attractive thing I've ever seen.
We had a conversation a few days ago about the coolest people in the history of the world.
Oh, Bob Fosse's
on that list. We didn't bring him up.
There. Yeah. Way up there.
Yeah, Bob Fosse's way up there.
Yeah. It was just nothing about this. Even if you look at his choreography, I'm this should be ridiculous. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. It's the most engaging thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh, when she's in the fucking apartment, My Friends Can't See Me Now, and she's just doing shit with the hat. Yes. Insane shit with the hat. She's popping it up and closing it down, and popping it up and closing it down, putting it I'm gonna wear it like this, and then it's a penis.
She's great. No, the whole movie's great. To the point I got on my own point earlier. Where I have a letterbox list of 100 movies that I think you need to see. Yeah. Sweet Charity's on it now. Yeah. It's just it just really hit me, and I'm excited to keep diving in and just keep gabbing about my guy Bob.
God, what an insane journey this is going to be. Yeah. Are there any performances that we really want to highlight?
I feel we already talked about Shirley MacLaine.
She's weirdly incredible in this movie.
I like Ricardo Montalban in this movie a lot too.
Well, yeah, but
he's great.
It's kind of a perfect Ricardo Montalban part.
Yeah.
It got to a point where it's when's he gonna sing?
Yeah, I was waiting for it.
And that didn't happen. Oh, there is a major character that is in the stage production that was cut out of the film entirely. There is a character of a fairy godmother that sort of interacts with Charity, apparently. That is just, I don't know how prominent she's.
I'm glad
no,
it's
you don't
gone.
need that.
I'm glad
You
it's
don't
gone.
need that. Here's the thing, that probably works better on stage.
Yes, I'm
just
sure.
in general.
I'm sure.
No, well, also, we should have mentioned, we don't have any experience with this show in particular, do we?
Sweet Charity, no.
I knew the song Hey Big Spender.
Yes.
I didn't know it was from this. I just thought that was like a pop standard, which it did. Peggy Lee is really the person who made that song famous. That was the version I knew. I didn't know it was from this show. My only experience from this is that when I was in high school and I was doing theater, I was the only person who wanted to do comedies. I did much better in comedies than I did in anything else. We did not have a lot of comedy gifted people in my grade, and as soon as I left my freshman year, he did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and he did Sweet Charity, and the musical of Sweet Charity has a book by Neil Simon, and I'm like,
yes.
And I'm like, the one time I leave is the one time we did Neil Simon.
I knew that because of Fosse Verdon.
Even if it's a musical, it's the one time we ever did Neil Simon. As soon as I graduated. So that was my only experience with Sweet Charity. I'm like, I know it's Fosse and I know Neil Simon.
Simon did it, yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting. Neil Simon didn't do the screenplay. It's by a legendary Hollywood screenwriter named Peter Stone. He wrote Charade. He wrote The Peking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Sort of guy who made sort of like thrillers with like a comedic edge. He sort of could do both worlds. But a lot of the Simon isms are still in there. Like, there are chunks of dialogue, like, that's so clearly Neil Simon. So I think it threads the balance pretty well. And there are probably things that feel very Simon-y, just comes from Peter Stone is also good at clever dialogue.
Yeah.
So yeah, Montalban, Chita Rivera.
Yeah.
She really has two main numbers. It's her main number, and then their three sort of, we're going to get out of here one day. Which, she's one of the all-time great Broadway divas.
Yes.
And her energy radiates from this film.
Yeah, because she was also in Chicago with Verdon much later, right?
Like 72?
Yeah.
Like, Chicago, the musical, he was doing it, like, the same time as Cabaret, the movie.
It was right afterwards. Yeah.
Was it right afterwards? Okay, so like 73, 74.
Well, it was the thing where he was doing that and Lenny at the same time, obviously. Yes. So when Lenny was in production.
That's like 73, 74 then. Yeah, so like 4 years later. Yeah.
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 Because I think Chita Rivera was in that run of Chicago with her, unless I'm completely misremembering.
I believe she's the... Oh, God, why are their names... Because Roxy was Gwen.
It's Roxy and Velma.
Yes, and Cheetah was Velma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's great.
Yeah.
She is good in Fosse Verdon. The
Cheetah
person who plays Cheetah Rivera.
Oh, okay.
She's very good in the show.
I'm like, here's the thing. I would not be surprised if they got an older Cheetah Rivera to play someone else.
No.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see all the different castings of people.
Yeah, the best one.
Right, no. Lin-Manuel Roy Scheider is just wrong for I cannot begin to tell you how many reasons.
It's just the Thomas Kail connection, which is a bummer, but it's what it is.
I mean, for one thing, different race.
Different race.
It's just...
No, he was the executive producer on the show. He worked with Thomas Kail on Hamilton.
Yes.
It might have been his idea to have him play Roy Schneider. Who knows?
But yes, I'm very curious to see all the ancillary legendary... Does anyone of note play Neil Simon, or...
He's not, like, of note.
Yeah.
We know... he's a guy we both know.
Okay.
He's one of those guys like, oh, it's that guy.
It's that guy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entire cast is good. John McMartin, good in this part. He originated it, but I was watching him and I was like, you're not quite Dick Van Dyke and you're not quite Jack Lemmon. You're sort of threading the line between the two, and you kind of have a face like Tab Hunter. Like, you remind me of three different people.
He's an everyman.
And you're doing it well, but also I'm like, I understand why you didn't become a movie star.
Yeah.
You don't have like a thing that's distinct
Exactly,
enough.
yeah. And that's part of the Oscars whole thing is he's like a wet blanket every man. Like there's nothing special about Oscar.
What's also interesting is that his big number he technically doesn't
sing. Yeah.
because Fosse, like, something I've never seen in another musical. It was just like I'm going to show it's probably because he's a choreographer. Like, who gives a fuck about the singing? I'm going to show the movement and the staging and the choreography, and I'm gonna focus on the visuals, and you're just gonna hear the song in the background. That happens for 2 different numbers in this, and it's one of them is Oscar's only big number, and it's one of Charity's numbers.
Yeah.
Which, like, you never... He's just... he's not only doing stuff you've never seen in a musical before, he's doing stuff I've never seen in a movie before.
Yeah. No.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
I'm trying to think of any... Montalban, I love... I mean, everyone in the Fandango.
Yeah.
Every one of the girls.
Yeah, they're great.
And Herman's great. I do love I Always Cry at Weddings. I think that's a great number.
That's a very good number, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, besides the first one, there really just isn't a
No, there's not a bad song.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Like, we're struggling to remember the names. The songs themselves are serviceable.
Yeah.
But it's the performance and the staging and then the way it's filmed.
With Fosse being a choreographer, the way it is staged.
And also their performance, they're all killing.
Yes.
Everyone's on the top of their game. A lot of these people came from, if not this show, Broadway in general.
Yeah.
It was not a lot of, like, Ricardo Montalban didn't have to sing. But Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah.
Shirley MacLaine was the only, like, movie star transplant.
Yeah. Which makes sense. The lead is the movie star transplant.
Yes. But here's the thing.
First
Of movie star transplants, she's among the best.
Yeah, she's pretty
Because having rewatched the back half of Into the Woods recently with Dan, my oh my, how many miscast people are in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that. Speaking of Rob Marshall, we're going to have to figure out where we watch Chicago in all of this.
Yeah.
Because
we should watch Chicago when he's doing Chicago. So right after Lenny.
See, I think we do Chicago in between All That Jazz and Star 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because obviously Chicago is a big part of All That Jazz as well.
Yes. And also, by the time we get to Star 80, we're done with musicals.
Yeah.
So I don't want to watch Chicago and constantly be thinking about the way Fosse would have done this. Because Bob Fosse, like most pros in the old school way of shooting musicals, it's a lot of wide shots, and if there is cuts and close-ups, they're very, very personable. Yeah. Whereas Rob Marshall...
I like the numbers in Chicago a lot.
Here's the thing. I remember thinking they're serviceable enough, but he cuts... what's something that cuts? What's something that cuts a lot?
A lumber mill.
Yeah, he cuts like a lumberjack.
Yeah, he cuts like a lumberjack. Yeah, it's never terrible in Chicago.
No. And also, he's done it worse.
He has done it worse.
He won the... Well, here's the thing. I know it won Best Picture, but he also won Director, right?
I mean, I'd have to double check that right now. I don't think he won Director. No, I'm excited. Like, we're doing all this plus, like, our, not surplus content. What's the word I'm looking for?
Ancillary viewing?
Things added to a thing to, like, expand what you're doing.
Expanded? Ancillary?
No, it's not ancillary. He did not win Director.
Okay, thank Christ.
He was nominated, did not win.
All right. 2002, what did win? Doesn't matter.
Yeah. We'll find it afterwards.
Yeah. But no, Chicago was the first... It's ironic because Chicago was the first musical to win Best Picture since Oliver, I think. Oliver, which was the year before Sweet Charity. Yeah. So we're at that end, that second golden era of musicals. Because the original golden era, like the 30s, 40s, and then that sort of revival in the late 50s into the 60s. We're with this movie's right at the tail end of it. It's basically the nail on the coffin. Because Coppola, One from the Heart, didn't pan out.
No, sadly did not.
Which One from the Heart isn't a traditional musical either.
No, it's
because
not.
The characters aren't singing. There's like a Greek choir that's Tom Waits. Do we have any final thoughts? I think we've kind of...
No, just very good movie. Excited to keep going on this journey.
Yeah.
Trying to think what that damn S word is for added stuff you do during a viewing.
Supplement?
There we go. Thank you. Like our supplementary content on top of this. Yeah. Because we're watching Fosse, we're going to watch Chicago.
No. I want to watch Liza with a Z, but it's impossible to find right now.
Is it? Damn.
Yeah. It was on Prime for a long time, and now it's just not.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's available to rent. Yeah. Bob, we don't have a closing line.
All that jazz?
I mean, the obvious one is it's Showtime.
It's Showtime.
But that's also... He would do that before a show.
If you wanted to find a quote from Sweet Charity, like, can we just cut this out? Would you want to do Sweet Charity, or do you want to do a different one?
I would have to be either Sweet Charity or Cabaret, I feel like.
This place is
Roll
so full of
that jazz.
celebrities. I'm the only one here I've never heard of.
That's a good one. Shirley MacLaine, the way she delivered jokes, she has such a fluttery, like, Charity seems like would be an impossible part to translate to Scream. And there's one that was like, you have to be joking, you're right? Because, no. And she's like, and she has that terrible thing where she's smiling. It's like, no, you wouldn't be joking because this is a pretty rotten joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how does someone come up with that delivery? How does someone come up with that delivery?
So we either do that one, Fickle Finger of Fate.
Absolutely not.
Ain't no use flapping your wings because you're stuck in Flypaper of Life. No, so I think it'd be, wow, this place is full of celebrities, only one here I've never heard of.
No, that's not a closing line. We have to find something from Cabaret.
The odds against us are at least 100 to 1. Those are the best odds I've ever had.
Not terrible. Actually, let's do that.
Without love, life would have no purpose. So you want to do that? So my charity or Oscar?
You're Oscar.
Okay.
So,
well, Steve, the odds.
Oh, wait. Join us next time on More Smoke, Please, when we're going to be talking about arguably one of the greatest American films ever made,
yeah.
Cabaret. I'm excited to be on a journey again with my good friend Connor. If we had a proper spring break, we would just do it all.
We would be
this
doing Fosse, all this week.
week. Yeah.
So Steve,
Just mainlining Fosse.
mainline of Fosse, straight to the brain.
Yeah. It's showtime.
Showtime.
Connor?
Steve, I'm gonna read to make sure I don't get it wrong.
What's my line?
There you go. So Steve, I'm gonna say the odds against us are at least 100 to 1.
Those are the best odds I've ever had.